Hello learners, this is Shawn from the KinderCare education team with you. Today we're going to look at another outdoor-based experiment where you're going to be able to set up a device and track what the weather is like around you. You might see these around airports, and these are something called a windsock. A windsock is a pole and it's traditionally orange, where at the end of the pole you have a fabric that, depending on the strength of the wind, it will blow and point in the direction of where that wind is going. So we're going to make our own homemade windsock, and you can use a lot of variety with the materials. So I'm going to show you an example of what I'm using, and I'll discuss some of the options you might have. The goal is going to be able to hang this up outside or even inside your home. You can walk around and carry it or swing it in order to see how strong the force of wind resistance is against it, or hang it up outside to see where wind is going, if there's much wind, and where it's flying to. So for today's activity, there's a few different supplies you're going to want to use. And they're all a little bit flexible, so it's all about what you have available. And the first thing you're going to want is something solid that can hold the wind and that can guide the wind to push the sock for your device. In this activity, I'm going to be using an empty 2-liter bottle. You could also make it out of cardboard. You could make it out of construction paper. You might just want to layer it a couple times so it doesn't bend and fold and collapse. Or you can make it out of a wire hanger that you bend around to just make that frame for it. It doesn't need to be anything large. It's something solid that you can attach strings to and that you're attaching the fabrics and the materials that make up your windsock. So I'm going to be using this 2-liter bottle, and we're only going to be using a small piece of it. You don't want too much weight, because if this is heavy, it's going to reduce the amount of ability for everything else to flow with the wind. So the smaller piece, just to give you a frame. You're also going to want to have your fabrics. So for your fabrics, it can be a couple different things. You can use cloth you have at home, clothes that you might not wear anymore, they might not fit. You want them to be typically looser fitting. If it's a heavy towel, it's not going to really move unless you have really strong winds. You also can use things like ribbon. So I have a little bit of ribbon that I'm going to use to show some examples. You can use streamers, which I don't have any streamers, but I do have some tissue paper, some cutting streamers out of the tissue paper. And you can even use things like reusable plastic bags from a grocery store. So this way we're not just using the bags and throwing them out, you're just cutting streamers out of these. So you have a couple different options. You can also use really lightweight paper. It's really up to you what you want to use. You just want something lightweight that if there's wind, it's going to be able to blow. So on top of these items, you're also going to want to have something that the adult's going to be able to use to cut and form your frame. So I have scissors and a knife that I'm going to be able to use to cut the bottle, but that's going to be adult use only. If you're using cardboard, the child can cut out the shape, or the adult can help and prepare that for them. But you're just going to want to have something that you can cut out, a small thin frame to hold the windsock together, because you don't want it all collapsing and then it's just one big towel blowing pretty much. You're also going to want to have a way to attach your fabrics to your windsock. So I have some masking tape here. You can cut holes into the object and tie it in. You can use hot glue guns or a stapler, or depending on how strong, if you're using ribbon, how strong your material is, you might be able to just tie knots around the shape. So really it's just whatever you have. I'm going to use masking tape because I'm expecting that the paper is going to tear fairly easily. So this tape's going to hold it in place. Whereas if I try to tie the paper, it's going to tear, and I don't have access to hot glue gun. So this tape should work for me. So to start, I'm going to go ahead and cut the bottle, and then I'll show you kind of what we want out of that framework. All right, so I've gone ahead and cut my 2-liter bottle. I'm not using a lot of the plastic. You'll notice that I'm just going to use this frame right here. It might be a little bit hard to see because it's clear, but we're going to be covering it pretty soon. You're just using a pretty thin frame. It's about 1.5 inches to 2 inches. I'm not using the top part. If you really feel this bottle, the top part is more dense. The plastic's more collapsed there. And that's going to add a little bit more weight because you're getting more thick plastic in that spot. I'm not using a ton of plastic because I really don't want a lot of weight. My goal is to be able to tell the power of wind whenever it's blowing. So if I have a light piece of plastic here, I'm going to be able to tell if the wind is very strong based off just the fabric moving or the entire thing shifting and moving with wind. So I'm not going to use the rest of these pieces, and I can save these for another rain gauge or another activity later. So you're going to want to take your materials. I have some ribbon, I have tissue paper, and I have plastic bags. And you're going to cut streamers that are about 1 to 2 inches wide and about 1 foot or 2 long at max. So I'm going to cut a couple of these apart. You'll also want to go ahead and have your tape ready so you can start building this. We're going to use ribbon to attach so we can hang this up, but you also can just use any twine, any string, a shoelace, whatever you have available in order to cut this. So we're going to put this together, and then we're going to discuss really how we're checking the weather and how we're checking wind forces using our windsock. So I'll be right back with those cut. All right, so now I have my plastic bags and my tissue paper and my ribbons cut. I have some tape, I have some scissors to cut the tape, or I can just tear the tape, and I have the piece we're attaching to. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a windsock by attaching these soft fabrics directly onto the ring, and that's going to allow us to hang it up and see where the movement is. I chose to have a variety of colors because that gives my windsock a little bit more design, makes it kind of like a decoration for my yard or my patio. So we're going to go ahead and take our streamers, and if you notice, my streamers, they're not all identical, not perfectly cut. We're really just trying to get a little bit something done. And I'm going to take it and drape it over the top of the container, and then I'll tape it down on the inside of this container. If you have glue, you can use glue. If you don't have glue or tape, you can always cut a hole in whatever fabric you use or whatever material you use. You can punch a hole through the cardboard and then tie it off. But really all we're looking to do is we're gonna have our streamers hanging like this. So I'm gonna attach a few of these around, and then we'll look and see what it looks like at the end. All right, so now we're back and we've built our windsock. All we have left to do is to attach something that's gonna allow us to hang it up or walk around with it to see how the speed in which we move and the air around us is causing it to flow. And it's gonna have different amounts of weight depending on where we're looking at the item. So we have the windsock here, and it has streamers that go all the way down. You have ribbons that kind of curl. They're a little bit more decoration, but they will also flow and move depending on the strength of the wind. And they're all draped by going inside and then folding out and over. So this way they might move depending on how much wind there is. So what we're looking at expecting to see is if there's a lot of wind outside, we might see the entire thing move and flow to the side. But if there's only a little bit of wind, we're gonna just see the legs or the bottom almost like a jellyfish as that moves and points in the direction the wind is going. Because when the wind is flowing this direction, the legs will flow with it. And so this is going to be allowing your child to see the direction of the wind, when does it change, how often does it change, and changes in the strength of the wind. So the last part you're going to want to do is you're going to have something that you can use to hang this piece up. You can add more colors, more ribbons. You can cut out and attach different pieces of art if you want to add art to it and design. But I'm going to just use this final piece of ribbon, and I'm going to attach it to the sides of the plastic from the bottle, and that's going to be what I use to hang it. Now I want to make sure that this part is really firmly attached because it's going to be holding the majority of the weight. So I'm going to use a piece of tape, and I'm going to make sure that it's nice and strongly attached in there. I might layer the tape to make sure that there's multiple pieces helping hold it down. But we're just going to attach, and we're going to create a handle or a loop that goes up and over to the other side. So we'll attach that here and attach it over on this side. So now our windsock has a handle that's going to help hold it up in the air. It's got a little bit of slack in this handle, so this way if there's enough wind to move the entire thing, we'll be able to see it move. And we can hang this up outside, and I'll be able to see how different types of materials, so the tissue paper versus the bag versus the ribbon, how do those move based off the strength of the wind. Also different lengths. So do I sometimes see the longer legs moving more often than the shorter legs? And when do I see the entire object move? If you notice and look outside and you see the windsock moving, you can have a conversation with your child and have them start to think about, well, which direction is the wind blowing and how do they get that decision? How are they deciding which direction it is? How can they know which direction it's blowing? And really start to have those scientific conversations where they're evaluating an action or an event and deciding based off the evidence what's occurring. As always, thank you very much for taking part in our learning today. Make sure you follow us on Facebook and Instagram to see more activities as we release them. And if you get a chance to do this activity or any of the others that we make, please share it on social media with the hashtag KinderCare so we can see all the learning still happening at home. Thank you.